is going to be speaking for 7 to 9 minutes. He's been a member of Club Awesome since 1989. Been here 20 years. That's great. He's an ATM Silver and an ACS. He speaks as number 5 out of the Advanced Storytelling Manual. The title of your speech is Bring History to Life. Our second speaker this morning is Bruce Pokey.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests, and guest Toastmasters. My purpose today is to share a bit of history with you. History that I remember reading for the first time at about age 10. How many of you have ever heard the name Douglas Bader? One person. Okay, well, don't give away the story. How many of you are pilots? Any pilots in here? Okay, we got a few pilots. Well, this is a story of Douglas Bader, an RAF pilot during World War II, who was quite the hero. Bader was born 21 February 1910. He joined the RAF in 1928. 13 September 1928, he took his first flight in an airplane. I love the name of his instructor. The instructor was W.J. Pissy Pearson. These call signs are incredible. I don't know where they come from. 19 February 1927. This was the day that Douglas Bader soloed in an aircraft after 11 hours and 15 minutes. Now, for any of you that are pilots, that's an amazing experience. I remember my solo, and the thing that I remember most about it was there was this big space that was now next to me as opposed to a person. But I did my solo, and Douglas Bader did his, and he was also considered to be an excellent pilot. 14 December 1931. This is a special day in Douglas Bader's life. In the flying community, there's a saying. There are old pilots and there are bold pilots. But there are no old, bold pilots. This was the day Douglas Bader almost became a bold pilot. On this day, he was flying with the squadron, and they were chiding him because he didn't want to do any aerobatics that day. Here is a top quality pilot that didn't want to do any aerobatics. So finally he succumbed. And what he did was at 600 feet, he went across the field and he did a slow roll. And as he did that slow roll, his left wing touched the ground, the plane cartwheeled, it was demolished, and of course he was taken to the hospital with very serious injuries. The interesting thing was, in his logbook, here's his entry. Very British, I might say. Crashed, slow rolling near ground. Bad show. Pip pip cheerio, you know? Now, it took him 6 months to recover, which he did, and he regained flight status. But 8 months later, his flight status was taken away from him because, according to the King's regulations, he didn't qualify for flying. So he went to work for Shell Oil, got married, started a family. 1939, World War II started between Germany and Great Britain. He used his connections in the RAF to become a pilot again. 27 November 1939. He soloed again 8 years after his crash. You know what he did the day he soloed? Somebody's got to guess.
Crashed.
He did a slow roll, 600 feet over the airfield, but this time successfully. 11 November 1940. This was his first kill, the first time he downed an enemy aircraft. 1941. He became a wing commander. This gave him special privileges. He was able to put his initials on the cockpit of his Spitfire, DB, which stood for his call sign, and don't ask me where it came from, Dog's Body. So Dog's Body was his call sign. August 1941. By August 1941, Douglas Bader had shot down 22 enemy aircraft. He was an ace 4 times over. Quite the pilot. 9 August 1941. This is the next major part of his career during that war. He was on patrol with his squadron over occupied France, and he encountered enemy aircraft. He spotted them about 3,000 feet below him. So he took his Spitfire, he pointed it almost straight down. The plane was screaming towards those aircraft. It was going so fast that, first of all, he almost hit one of them, as opposed to shoot one of them. He was going so fast that he overshot the airplanes and had to pull up at about 24,000 feet. Now, these planes were long gone by that time. And it says he had to collect himself. I would tell you in non-Toastmaster terms, but I can't say that here. He was scared the bejeebies out of him. But he recovered, and he had the choice. Do I go back to Britain, or do I re-engage? At that moment, he saw 12 more fighters above him. So he pulls back on the stick, he aims towards the aircraft, he takes the first one out with a shot, a short burst. He goes towards the second, and he sees off to his left 2 airplanes coming directly at him. He banks hard right, pulls off to the right side, with 2 other aircraft coming directly at him. What happens next? We're not sure. But what it says in the records is that the tail of his aircraft came off. So that means he had to eject. He pulled the cockpit back, started to eject from the aircraft, but he got stuck. The leather straps on his artificial legs caught on the side of the cockpit. When he pulled the parachute, he came free, and he floated to the ground and was captured by the Germans. Now, did I tell you that he had 2 artificial limbs? I guess I forgot that, didn't I? Well, you remember that crash in 1931? He lost his legs back then. And what was, to some people, a detriment towards flying became an attribute. Because he didn't have his limbs, he was able to pull more G's than the typical pilot. Because when you pull a lot of G's, the blood rushes to your feet. He didn't have as far to go. So he could fly faster, turn sharper, go higher, dive steeper. Those were the things that set him apart. He was so well regarded by the Germans that on 19 August 1941, they allowed the British to do Operation Leg. That's right. The British were allowed to come over and drop and leg to the Germans to take him to his prison where he was. Bader was such an aggressive individual that he tried multiple times to escape. So much that they determined they were going to take his legs away from him. But they didn't. 1976, Douglas Bader became a knight in the British Empire. He wasn't knighted for his feats during the war. He was knighted because of the work that he did with disabled individuals. In 1981, he met the German pilot that was credited with shooting him down at an air show in Sydney, Australia. 5 September 1982, Douglas Bader died. Interesting date to me because that's my birthday. And he was a guy that I read about way back when that I think is a remarkable individual, and hopefully you enjoyed the story. Mr. Toastmaster.